Welcome to Behind the Title, where leaders show up differently. Today I'm joined by a very old friend, Pippa van Praagh, VP of Operations at Praagh. Pippa joined me to talk about all things work, maternity, and being a working parent. Importantly, what it's like to be a woman at the table in the world of technology today.
The reason why I wanted to come on this podcast today was to just share some of the experiences that I've had, some of the moments that I look back on my career and regret and wish I could change, and some of the things that have actually made me a much more resilient leader. So yeah, I hope you enjoy some of those stories.
Pippa, welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a very long time we haven't seen each other.
I think it's 15 years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
It might be longer.
Yeah, I think it might be. But if you could maybe just give them an introduction to yourself, what you do, and then why it was important to come on to Behind the Title.
Sure. So I'm Pippa. The first part of my career, the first 10 years or so of my career, I worked in various different kind of communications, PR teams, in-house, everything from big PLC to international charities, a real mix. And then I'd say I'd spent the last 8 or so years in the tech world. So I moved from kind of comms and traditional comms into tech with a comms role actually initially. And then since then, it's just been a whirlwind of taking different opportunities and different roles. I'll take anything going, broaden my experience massively. And now I work at Praagh, an HR tech company. I'm their vice president of operations and oversee kind of the day-to-day running of everything across our global offices.
I guess the question I ask everyone is, Behind the Title is all about leaders showing up differently.
Yeah.
Obviously, I sent you through a note and you were absolutely happy to get involved. Why do you think things like this are really important? And why is it important for you to be on here today?
For me personally, it's been a really amazing but challenging journey at different points. I think as I've got older and more senior, I feel the weight and the kind of the responsibility to lead differently. When I was younger, I didn't feel like a lot of doors were opened for me. I often felt like often women weren't always the best allies in businesses, and I would feel that kind of pressure of not being too senior or just not getting the support that I think I needed.
Yeah.
And so I really don't want to lead like that. I spend a lot of my time mentoring different people in the business, particularly women. And I take that really, really seriously because I think that we all have an opportunity to just lead with a little bit more humanity, basically.
I'm fascinated. How is the tech world versus, I guess, the corporate communications world? They're very different, either pace, setup, structure.
Yeah, it's much faster in tech. It's funny because I used to work in comms and thought that I worked at absolute pace. Yeah. And you know what it's like in a really busy comms team when you're dealing with a reactive PR nightmare and you're trying to do a massive internal communications change program or mergers and acquisitions. You think you're working at such pace, and often we were. I think tech takes that a step further, to be honest with you, just because the pace of change within technology itself is so fast. If you think about what's happening now and the world and AI, every day that you come up with a new idea or you're trying to innovate on your product, you're being outpaced by the market. So you've got to be
by the kids.
Oh, and definitely by my kids. So you've got to almost be 3 steps ahead instead of just 1 step ahead. But I love that pace. I don't think I could work in anything other.
Do you think there's a stigma around women in tech, in particular, either attracting or even retaining talent? Because I assume once people get in it, it may not be as they thought it would be.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Even in just the last 8 years that I've been in it, I've seen massive progress, though. I remember when I first started, the majority of our product and engineering teams were mostly men. And, where I am now, I think it's a really even split. Some of our most innovative, brilliant product managers are women. Some of our incredible designers in that team are women too. So I think there's been a real shift. I think where there's still a long way to go is when you start looking at senior leadership teams and exec teams. It's still common to see a mostly male exec board. Again, very, very fortunate where I am. We've got a real even split on our exec team. For me, that was a really big decision as well. Can I be part of a team that feels inclusive and I've got that here, but I don't think that that's that common in the sector.
It's funny. I'm sitting here as you're talking, and I'm like, obviously, I know you from, and you know me from when we were younger,
I was a child.
both of us, and now I see you sitting here, incredibly recognised career, seems like fairly seasoned, and I'm like, wow, like amazing to see.
Thank you.
You now to. I guess when we knew each other, we like to get behind the scenes here. So, the backstage pass, we call it, and understand, was there a moment in your career where everything looked fine, but actually,
it's
behind.
like, how long do you have?
Well, I mean, we have as long as you want.
There are two moments in my career that I think really defined how I am today. The first was when I had my daughter Ruby. So she's 10 now. And when I had her, I was in an exceptionally busy comms team. I was the first one to have a baby. The majority of the team were actually women, but I just happened to be the first one to go away and kind of have a child. And I think that was really difficult for so many reasons. One, I was quite young. Like I don't think at the time I thought I was young. I think I was about 27, 28. Looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, she was such a... I feel like I was still a baby myself.
Well, I think the world has moved on. People are having kids later.
Yeah, and they do. And so, outside of work, I had friends that were having children, but in work, I was absolutely the first. And not of all time, but in my team, I was the first to have a baby. And so I'd gone from working all the hours that I wanted to work. I'm an absolute workaholic by nature. I would often be in the office till 10, 11 o'clock at night. By choice, no one was forcing me to be there. And I kind of left work in that world, went and had a baby, and then had a really, really difficult birth with her. I was in a lot of pain physically for a really, really long time. And it was probably the first time I really, looking back now, was not in a good place, like mentally either. And I think, I was on a huge amount of painkillers for a really long time. Obviously, having a baby in itself is a whirlwind, not sleeping at all. And I think I just got to a really kind of like dark place. And I think the challenge was I had friends outside who were, it seemed to me, were like bossing it. They were like, having their babies, off to meet friends at, like at the park or a coffee shop like a few days later. And I was just like at home when, my husband was back to work after 1 week.
Wow. In
this like really difficult place. And I didn't really seek any help during that time. I wish I had. If I could go back in time, I would have gone and got therapy. I don't know why I didn't. I don't think you really recognise it when you're in it. That was a challenge when I got back to work. So my natural instinct then was I need to get back to work because that's where I felt like I knew what I was doing.
Did you take the full maternity period?
I cut my maternity short. I went back early.
Okay.
Because all I could get in my head was I will feel fine when I go back to work. When I can get back to doing like what I know, like, and don't get me wrong, I am obsessed with my children. Like I adore them loudly. Like I'm that one in the playground where I'm like all the kisses, all the smooches, and my kids are like, oh my God, please go. But in my head, it was the thing that was going to like save me was just to get back to work. So I threw myself back into work probably 5-6 months. And even while I was off, a project had come up at work that they really were struggling with and asked if I would do some consultancy while I was
So it was almost like they knew they could come to you.
Yeah. I mean, I am that person. Like, we'll get into that a bit later. That's
no, I identify with that because I'm very similar.
Yeah.
Albeit I have a...
You have some boundaries.
Well, someone else sets the boundaries in the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my husband tries. But yeah, so I kind of went back to work. I'm in this environment where none of my peers at that point have kids. I go from being able to work all the hours to like a short day, right? You've got to pick up your kids from nursery. And that whole thing, I found it really, really difficult because I just didn't feel like I belonged I didn't feel like I was doing a good job at home. I didn't feel like I was doing a good enough job at work because I'd gone from only knowing how to work all hours of the day to that's not possible anymore. And no one at work could relate at all to me. But I ended up leaving that job. And to this day, I maintain it was like one of my biggest career regrets because I loved it there.
Right.
Absolutely loved it. But I just couldn't, in my head, I just couldn't make it work. And then I had like
and sorry, just to unpack that. So you couldn't make it work because culturally you felt you were in a different place to a lot of your team.
Yeah.
and therefore you felt uncomfortable, or?
I couldn't find the balance. I couldn't find how I was going to be as good at my job anymore.
Okay.
Without working all those hours, and you do. One of the things that everyone says when you have kids, you become the most productive that you've ever been, because you've got finite hours then, and you're trying to get all of the same deliverables done with much less time, and you're really productive. But I don't know, I just got it in my head that it wasn't working, and I just didn't feel like I was delivering either way, and I just kind of left, handed in my notice. I remember my boss was like, no, why? What are you talking about? Really surprised. And I walked away from a job that I absolutely loved. And I still think about it all the time. I actually bumped into some people from that company at an event the other day and went up and was like, this was one of my favourite places I've ever worked. I think they thought I had absolutely lost my mind. They had no idea who I was. I think the second time I was like, I knew what I was doing. Yeah. First time round was a big shock to the system.
It's interesting. Before I met my other half, I was not dissimilar to you, and coming into their life. So my now stepson, I was in the office till 10, 11 p.m. at night. And I'd say it's taken a good 5 years to find balance. And I'm still...
Finding balance.
Yeah. I still love my job. I still, do all hours that I can. But I'm more aware of it now, and I'm more supportive of her building her career, have been for the last 7-8 years, been championing that, but also the people that I work with.
Yeah,
you said there was a second.
Oh, the second, yeah.
You said there was a second. I'm wondering if that's more...
the second time was I basically let myself burn out terribly. Again, I don't think I would have accepted or said that at the time. This was many, many years later, working in tech. I'd got back into the habit of working all hours of the day. I was back-to-back meetings 24/7 in a very, very kind of high-pressure, stressful job. And I think the shift was the company had been owned by private equity, and then we sold out. And the company just changed overnight in terms of culture and values. And I think that was a really big lesson for me, is that I actually will always be someone who will work over the hours. I love working. I love working, and I actually do really well under pressure. That's where I perform best. But when that doesn't align with your values, all of a sudden all of that work really conflicts with who you are. If you're aligned and you're really pleased with what you're building and you believe in what you're building, I would work all hours under the sun. But when that happens and those things don't align anymore, I think it's just prime for burnout. And again, the more that I kind of wanted to fix it and overcompensate, the more I worked. And then you're still juggling 2 kids, still doing all of the life admin, which is never ending. All of the play dates and the planning school holidays and cooking, cleaning, all of the stuff that goes along with running a house or having kids. I was just overcompensating everywhere. So I was cleaning my house obsessively. I would try and declutter everything. Because in my head, the less stuff we had, the easier it'd be to keep up with everything, but also working more and more and more. And it's really funny because your body has a really incredible way of letting you know when enough is enough. Yeah. And 2 years prior to that, I'd really injured my back. This is life lesson for anyone. Do not do kettlebell squats when you've had children. I literally, not long postpartum, a few years prior, had gone back to the gym way too quickly, slipped 2 discs in the bottom of my back, which I used to be, I feel bad saying this now, but I used to be the person that would roll my eyes when someone said they had a bad back. I cannot tell you how painful slipping a disc in your back is. It is honestly overwhelming pain. Anyway, I'd done that a few years earlier, and it would flare every now and then. I'd had MRIs and, all the painkillers under the sun. But it just wasn't getting better. And the more stressful my job got, the more it was flaring more regularly. And I just got to the point where my back just gave out. And it was the 4th time that year. So I was, again, back on really high painkillers, trying to work, trying to navigate getting kids to school. I couldn't even move. I remember just getting on a call with my boss, just a routine, one-to-one. And I just started crying, and I was like, I'm really sorry, but I think I'm done. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, no, I think I'm done. And he was really great. I mean, he was like, take 6 weeks out, take a break. And I was like, I could do all of those things. The problem is I know that when I get back, it will be exactly the same. Like my heart was not in it anymore. So I wasn't expecting to hand in my notice, but like it just like came out of my mouth. And he said to me then, he was like, the funny thing is, give it a few months and I bet your back gets better. And that was nearly 2 years ago, and I haven't had a flare up since. And I just think it's interesting, A
lot of it is linked to, well, it's I've got a very good friend who had chronic back pain a long time, but he took a more holistic approach through stretching, diet, managing stress, and actually it was a total transformation. He had 2 back operations.
Wow, yeah.
And those didn't work. So
that's the problem. People you can have it done. I went to see all like the top backs, and they were like, the problem is if you don't fix, you'll just slip another disc. So
it's interesting because there's a theme here with leaders, right? And it's either burnout or it's compromising on their personal and mental well-being, not necessarily committing as much to their family and enjoyment. And I talk about, there's like certain frameworks that I've learned. So like the ACE framework, you're nodding, so you know it. So, but for those that don't know, it's every day trying to ace your day. So one, sense of achievement, whatever that may be. I could like literally learn a new skill. I could take the rubbish out, but it's that sense of I've done something, connection. So who have I connected with today? Like a real connection that we've obviously made after 15 plus years. And then what am I doing to enjoy? And I feel like I learned that a couple of years back. I hadn't taken time off sick and I took it off. It was actually early COVID. I was really struggling mentally. I was signed off work and, I learned this framework and it's been revolutionary. And I don't sit there every day writing it out. I did at the beginning.
Yeah.
But I think leads me to kind of ask, were there moments where you stayed silent, and that might not necessarily be about you, it might be about just stuff in the workplace. And was there kind of a time when you wish you'd actually said something? Yeah,
loads of times. There's still times. There are still, I don't think that ever ends, actually. I think it'd be lovely to say we get, bolder and braver and we say all the things that we wish we had said, but there are reasons why you don't at the time. There's nuances, there's politics, there's, but there are times that I look back on now. I wish I had said, like, help me through this period, and like actually spoken out rather than just like leaving, like feeling like leaving was my only option, and had like just a really frank conversation with my boss, who is still a really good friend of mine. It's ridiculous, right? She was a friend, and I still didn't feel like I could sit there and be like, I don't know what's going on with me, but this isn't working. And was that for fear of being judged, or? I don't know, to be honest with you. I think maybe pride. I'm not really one to say that I am not okay. Yeah. I probably am still that way, by the way. Like I'm no better at that. I think in terms of like a time that I wish I spoke up that I have got better at is I was in one role in a very kind of corporate role, and used to sit in these meetings. If any of the people who I used to work with are listening to this will know exactly what I'm talking about. I used to sit in these meetings where like one of our senior leaders used to really, really bully a couple of members of the team. Just like would hone in on them straight away, and it was so uncomfortable, and you would just sit there. First of all, you didn't want it to be you, but also you just feel so uncomfortable. Yeah. And she would just laser focus on that, and she just would not let up, And I would pull her aside afterwards and say, that was not okay, like that was too harsh, but I wouldn't do it in the room. What was the reaction when you did it off outside of the room? Pretty defensive, obviously. No one likes to be told not to lead that way. But would concede and be like, okay, you're right, and then like send a quick apology. But like next week it'd be the same thing all over again. So it was like really making no difference. And I do think about that a lot. Like that's a regret. And I didn't for lots of reasons. Again, like I was like the breadwinner in my family. Like I don't have the luxury of not working. I've got 2 kids, mortgage, and so you do have that fear of what will happen if I call that out in this room. But now I'm much more like, there are less F's given, you know? And so if I see that now, I mean, again, I'm very lucky where I work. Like, the culture is amazing, and it's fail fast. You know, we make mistakes, we learn, we move on. But, you know, you'll always get someone who goes a little bit too hard on someone or calls someone out inappropriately or whatever it might be. And I'm much better now at calling that out in the room. It's still uncomfortable. I still don't love doing it. But as a leader, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that you do.
I still think today, maybe it's seniority.
Yeah. That
people don't always feel comfortable. I say quite a lot of my team, you know, it's about managing up.
Yeah, totally.
And down.
Yeah.
Because I might sometimes experience conversations and it's the first time I'm hearing about them. And so the question for me is, well, how long's this been going on, and have you had a conversation? And there might be not to minimize, there might be small things, there might be larger things, but I encourage a really open dialogue and conversation. That doesn't work for everyone.
No, I get that.
You know, there are forums in every company, you know, to speak up either to, you know, your line manager or you know, other company routes. But I often find that it's the same triggers which evoke these feelings, or you know, these reactions. So one of the triggers for me is I find it really hard when there's a lot of delegation and there's not a huge amount of accountability. Yeah. And that's because I'm probably a bit like you. I'm like, can we just get it done? And therefore, I have to manage my own expectations around that and know that not everyone works at my pace. Not everyone works the same as me. Everyone's different.
I literally have this conversation every week.
Yeah, you know, we're in a diverse workforce. Are there certain triggers during your career that I think have accelerated some of the kind of negative or challenging moments that you've had in any of these companies you worked in?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, much like you, I work at pace, and for some people that's really great, and for some people it's probably a little bit chaotic. So I have to really manage myself. My leader now is always like, you can't fix everything. And I'm like, I know, but I really want to.
Yes, now.
Yeah, and I want to do it yesterday. He's like, yeah, but you can't fix everything.
How funny is this? We are so similar.
Yeah,
like in a working sense. Yeah. But never would have called it like this.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really funny, and it's something that I actively work on a lot. And I also, when I hire, I'm very, very honest with people about what it is like to work with me. This makes me sound like really awful.
No, but this is the same.
But I'm just like, I can be a little bit chaotic because I like to work really fast, and I really like to get, and that like total accountability, like go and do it. I don't care how many mistakes that you make, just like own it, and then we learn fast and we'll fix it. And that's great for some people, but not for others. So I'm very honest about what it's like working with me. I guess growing up a little bit in terms of leadership would be, I really don't like it when people speak over or interrupt people, especially women. So I actively will say, I don't think so-and-so was quite finished talking. Why don't we listen to the end of their point, and then we can... And I do that really purposefully now, because I feel like...
With that tone?
Yeah, with that tone. Was it scary? It's like a teacher, is it?
I was like, I want to be in that boardroom.
I think it's really important to allow people to finish their train of thought, or, you know, especially, you know, women.
I'm bad at that. I'm actually bad.
Like talking over people?
Yeah, not purposely.
Yeah.
Sometimes, again, it comes back to the point, like, no, I know the answer, so let me just finish the sentence. I'm really bad. But I'm also quite aware of it, and so I will actively either apologise in the moment, or... You know, I've had moments, sorry I interrupted you, but I've had moments where...
It's hilarious, by the way.
Jesus, can we cut that one? No, but I've had moments where you could be in a room and senior leaders want to move things on. Does that make sense?
Because you just need to get an action out of it and move on. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I also think I call it out because I'm also not good at it. Yeah. Like my husband would say I'd talk over him all the time and finish his sentences, which must be hugely irritating. But I think, again, I'm aware of it, so I try and actively like correct myself and correct it for other people. The other thing that I find personally like triggering is I hate not knowing the answer to things. And that's not possible, right? It's not possible to know the answer to every single question, every data point across the whole business. But still, personally, if someone puts me on the spot and asks me something and I don't know the answer, my instant reaction is like blind panic. Because I'm such a people pleaser that I hate not knowing the answer, which is ridiculous, right? Because I would be the first to go, we don't need to know all the answers, just say. I'd much prefer you to say, oh, I don't know, I'll come back to you later. But when it's me, it's an instant confidence knock. It's an instant, I'm not good enough to be at this table.
But I think you're probably with 50% of the working force, I would say.
Probably.
Do you feel sometimes that you're not worthy of the role that you have or the positions that you've previously held? I get those imposter syndrome moments.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's really deep rooted. I think there's a part of me that will always feel I don't belong there because I don't have a degree. So I didn't go to university. I mean, I did go to university and I left after one term. And I just wanted to like go and work, which is what I did. Moved back to London, worked every day since then, moved out, that's what I wanted to do. But I think now that I'm older, I still hold this almost like shame that I'm like the only one at the exec table without a degree. I think I am. I actually don't know that. I think they've all got MBAs. And even though I've worked since I was 19, like not been out of work since 19 years old, and so have all of that experience, I still hold that, I don't know, embarrassment or shame that I didn't finish uni.
I mean, I never went to uni, but I think that's why social mobility is so important nowadays. Jeff Bezos always talks about leaving it's a bit cliche, but leaving a chair open in a room as the voice of the customer. I think that sometimes within tech, media communications, we are very, London-centric, and therefore you forget about the 70% of the rest of the population that's out there that don't necessarily experience or don't have necessarily privilege, but
I know what you mean, though, or the same experience or opportunities open to them. But it's an interesting one. I think there's still more work to be done. I'm sure if I ever had time for therapy, they'd find a pretty quick reason for that. But it's funny, my sister's exactly the same. She's like an A-type, people pleaser, workaholic, very, very, very similar.
Was there like a moment you looked metaphorically or physically in front of a mirror, and was there a single piece of feedback or something that you received that kind of gave you a realization that whilst you weren't going to change in totality, because we know that we are of type and therefore it's hard to, was there a single moment or realization where you thought, I need to change? Something has to be different. Because I think that's the bit that I struggle with sometimes. So when I got into recovery, I know that, I was lost for a long time and kept myself, isolated until, a family member stood me in front of the mirror and said, is this how you want to
be in the world, kind of thing? Yeah.
And I was like, no. And that was, physically in front of a mirror. But
I think it was actually more the second time around with like the burnout. I think I was in a lot of pain physically with my back. I was taking lots of painkillers. I was working around the clock. I was probably drinking too much wine. It was getting close to Christmas. And obviously, so like, stress is heightened. You've got like loads going on. Kids are like, so excited and frantic. And I was just so unhappy. And I think I just had this moment where it's like, next year cannot be more of the same. I'm not being like the snappy mum that's like short-tempered because I'm exhausted. I'm not letting like my entire health fall to shit for that, especially because my heart wasn't in it anymore. And I just knew that I couldn't go into the next year. And, it's cliche, right? Start of a new year and all of that stuff. But it was really like a promise with myself that was not how I was going to be. That was not how I was going to parent. How I want to work or not is, is very much on me. But it all boils down to how I want to parent, like how I want to show up for my kids. And I want them to see that like I'm hardworking, that I love my job, which I do, and that anything good in life takes hard work. It's not handed to you. You have to work hard to get anything that is worthwhile. But I also, they'll always be my priority. Them feeling, secure and happy, and like they are celebrated, and that will always be my number one. And I make no qualms about that at work. I parent very, very loudly at work. I will be the first one to be like, sorry, can't make that. I've got sports day. And my 6-year-old is in a tug of war. She literally came last in every single race.
The spirit,
she was
though,
so happy.
It?
She was so happy.
It's funny, actually. My stepson, I missed it last week because I was recording.
One of these.
Recording one of these, and he won in tug of war, and he got the longest throw, whatever. And if I'm honest with you, see, I love him to pieces, but I don't regret not going. It's just not. That's not a draw for me in terms of I coach his football team, for example.
Yeah, that's nice.
And so I show up on a Friday, most Fridays to training. I'm there on the Sundays, lugging the balls and, also like giving your child feedback in a team and then him being like in front of the play, that's tough. But I think that whole point around just showing up quite loudly for your kids, I think it's really, really important. And one of the things that I will say, I do like pace and I want radical kind of accountability, but I also want flexibility. I don't want people in my team ever to miss a life event. And actually my CEO who I work for now, I worked for him years ago, which is why I came on board here, because I love working for him. He always was a big champion of that. He's like, you never miss a life event. Like, this all comes and goes. Work is important and you've got to love what you do. But at the end of the day, it's your family who will be there after all of it. So you never miss a life event, and I never miss a life event. Amazing. I need to learn a thing or two. In fact, I might even cut that one out of the edit. And has there been a moment in your family life where either your kids or your partner have just said, enough, mummy, enough? Well. Yeah,
my husband, that point when I left during the burnout, we were definitely like rowing more, because I also was like obsessively talking about work to the point that I think he just got fed up, like rightly so, because I was trying to play it through in my head. Like, I think I knew I needed to leave. I knew that I was like burnt out, but I couldn't almost come to terms with that. Didn't want to almost give up. So I was like obsessively talking about it. I was getting shorter, like with the kids. Like, my patience was probably wearing thin. His patience was wearing thin with me. And I just remember we ended up having this like blazing row one day. The kids weren't there, and we like never argue, by the way. Like, we're not really at home confrontational people at all. So this was quite like, you remember those moments. Yeah. And I can't remember what he said, but he basically just kind of shouted at me and like told me like enough was enough. Actually, I feel like that's what gave me the license. I think I had it in my notice the next week. I hadn't even told him I was going to do it. I didn't even know I was going to do it, but I think in my head that moment was where I just went, you know what? There are bigger things. There are more important things. It is amazing, though, the ability or the power that our families can have in kind of making us have that realization. Yeah. And it takes that rather than ourselves. To see that. Or to make that switch in your head. I find it fascinating. I need an ultimatum from someone which says enough is enough before I can actually pause. And I think that's really certainly the takeout I want people to have from this, is that we talk about the permission slip, If you could give them a single kind of a single piece of advice or permission to speak up or seek help or whatever it may be, what would that be for you? What permission would you grant to others that are either in the tech world, in communications, a female in leadership, a male that might be struggling? Like, what single piece of feedback would you give them? I think it would be to stand up for the things that you just really believe in. It's really, that's like easy advice, right? It's so much easier said than done. I've said that before. There are days at the moment, like, where I'm like, I should have handled that better, or I could have done that meeting better, or I shouldn't have said that to so-and-so. But I think it's so important. If there's something that you believe in at work, like, be that change. You don't have to be on the leadership team to make change. You don't have to, manage a team. Everybody has the power to like make their working environment better for themselves and for everyone. Like, I'm a big believer in the culture is only as good as like everyone puts into the culture. So like if there's something that you see at work that you don't think is quite right, or there is someone that you think is doing an amazing job and, you know, should be promoted, I literally will actively go to that manager and be like, I just wanted to say, like, they're doing an incredible job. I'm sure you've noticed, but I wanted to give that feedback. And a lot of those things happen without anybody knowing that that's what you do. You know, it's not performative. I think that's what's really important. I think I talk a lot about like kind of sponsorship at work over mentorship. I do mentor some people as well, but there are other people in the business who I really sponsor when they're not around, and they'll never know that happens. But it's so important. Create the world that you want to work in, because it's on all of us to do that. And that would be my permission slip.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining today. This has been amazing. Quite cathartic to sit across from you and actually hear so many similarities. It's probably, you know, I need to do my mirror moment at the moment and just kind of think about it. But hugely appreciate you joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and look forward to you guys listening to the next episode.